Hello, my name is Emma, and in today's lesson, I am going to teach you a bunch of new vocabulary expressions. These expressions are all very common and very useful. So the expressions we're going to learn today all have the word mind in them, okay? And there are a lot. I'm not even covering all of them because there are so many expressions in English with the word mind. So we're only going to cover some of them, but we're going to cover the main ones. Okay, so when we talk about mind, there are different ways we're talking about mind. Mind can have to do with the brain and with thinking or thoughts. Okay, so sometimes when we're talking about mind, we're talking about our brain or we're talking about our thoughts. Sometimes we're talking about something totally different with mind. Sometimes when we're talking about mind, we're actually talking about being polite. For example, do you mind? This is something where you're being polite. And then we also use mind when we're telling somebody to pay attention to something. For example, mind the gap or mind the hole. So we have these 3 times where we're using mind, and we have a lot of different expressions for each of these different categories. So we're going to go over each of these. I'm going to teach you a bunch of expressions where mind has to do with thought or brain. I'll teach you a lot of expressions where it has to do with politeness. And then I'm going to teach you a lot of mind expressions that have to do with paying attention. But this is pretty much one way you can look at these expressions. So let's get started by talking about when we're talking about mind and thoughts and the brain. So first, when we talk about mind, one meaning of mind can have to do with pretty much the brain, but it's not exactly the brain, okay? So your brain is in your head, and it's a physical thing. You can touch the brain, you can feel the brain, you can see the brain, smell the brain, so it's physical. Mind is not physical. You can't see the mind, because the mind is where your thoughts are, where your memories are, and these are things you can't really see or feel, but they're somewhere in here. We just can't see them because they're not physical. So for example, Einstein, very famous scientist, Einstein had a brilliant mind, okay? So this means Einstein had brilliant thoughts. He was very smart. He had, brilliant ideas. These things are all in his mind. So it's similar to brain, although not exactly the same thing. It's very similar to brain. We can also say psychologist. A psychologist is a job, and people who are psychologists, they study the human mind, meaning they look at the brain and they look at people's memories. They look at the way people have ideas, and they think about where do these things come from, okay? So they study the human mind. So a lot of the times when we use the word mind, we're talking about kind of your brain and your thoughts. We might say, oh, Beethoven had an incredible mind. Or, in your opinion, which minds were the greatest of the 20th century? Who had the greatest mind? Meaning, who had the greatest ideas and thoughts and pretty much brain? Okay, so that's mind. Now let's look at another way we use mind, and that's in the expression on someone's mind. So this is a very common expression. In English, we often ask, what's on your mind? Or we also say, I have a lot on my mind. So what does on my mind mean? And make sure you have on someone's mind. So it can be on my mind, on your mind, on her mind, on John's mind. You can pretty much put any person here. What does it mean? Well, when we talk about on our mind, we're usually talking about problems. So we're usually talking about problems that we are thinking about. These are thoughts. We're thinking about something, so it's on our mind. So let me give you an example. If I ask you, what's on your mind? I'm asking you, what are you thinking about right now? What's on your mind? And you might tell me, some problem you're having. I had a fight with my brother. That's on my mind right now. That's what I'm thinking about. You can also say, I have a lot on my mind. When somebody says this, it means they're saying, I'm thinking about some problem I'm having. I have a lot on my mind. It means I'm thinking about a lot of problems right now, or a big problem I have. So you'll see often in TV or movies, somebody says, what's wrong? Oh, I have a lot on my mind right now. Sorry. Okay, meaning I have a lot of things I'm dealing with at the moment, or I have a lot of problems in my life. Okay, so on my mind has to do with thoughts. Often it has to do with problems and thinking about problems. Now let's look at some other examples with the word mind when we're talking about thoughts and the brain. Okay, so our next expression also has to do with thinking, thoughts, and the brain, and that's have in mind. Okay, so have in mind. So when you have something in mind or someone in mind, what it means is that you are thinking about a person for a position. So for example, who are you voting for? I have Trudeau in mind. So I am thinking about Trudeau for the position of Prime Minister. Or, maybe if you're following American politics, if Hillary Clinton is running, you might say, who are you voting for? Oh, I have Hillary in mind. This could also be for a promotion at work. Maybe you need to hire somebody for your company or promote somebody. So you want to give somebody a job. Who do you have in mind for the job? Oh, I have my sister in mind, or I have George in mind. He's a good employee. So it's where you're thinking, or it's like your opinion about a person for a position. You think this person is good for this position. So you have this person in mind for this position. We can also use it with a thing also. It doesn't always have to be a person. For example, when we are thinking about something, some sort of object that is right for a situation. So for example, I'm pretty hungry right now. I'm thinking about dinner. So somebody might say, oh, what do you have in mind for dinner? So what are you thinking about for dinner? What is right for dinner? In my opinion, I have pizza in mind. That's what I'm thinking about. I'm thinking about pizza. Pizza is right for this situation. Okay. So again, we can use it either with a person or a thing, but you're pretty much saying that this is right for this situation in your opinion. Okay. Our next expression is lose someone's mind. Okay. I really like this expression. When you lose your mind, it means you go crazy. So for example, I'm losing my mind. The cat is speaking English. Okay, so this means I'm going crazy because cats, of course, don't speak English. So I'm losing my mind. We can also use it if somebody's doing something very strange. I think my dad has lost his mind. He's, wearing a winter jacket and it's summertime. I think my dad has lost his mind. I think my dad has gone crazy. So we use this expression a lot, especially in conversation. All right, now let's look at some other expressions to do with the mind. Okay, so our next expression is cross someone's mind. So this could be cross my mind, cross your mind, cross her mind, cross his mind. And what it means is when we think of an idea very quickly, okay? An idea comes into our head very quickly. So for example, it just crossed my mind that I need to buy bread today. It means I've just really quickly come up with this idea. Or it crossed my mind that I should bring an umbrella because it's going to rain. So it just means a quick idea. Okay, our next expression, give a piece of someone's mind. I really like this expression. It means when you're giving someone an angry opinion, Okay, so when you give a piece of your mind, you're usually angry like this. So maybe, you want to call your telephone company and you've been waiting and waiting and waiting and nobody's answering the phone. You might say to yourself, I'm going to give them a piece of my mind. It means I'm going to give them my angry opinion. I'm so angry right now. So she gave them a piece of her mind, okay? If I ever meet, like maybe there's somebody you don't like, if I ever meet Johnny, I'm going to give him a piece of my mind. It means I'm going to tell him my angry opinion about him, okay, what I don't like about him. Okay, the next one is also an expression. I love this expression, actually. When your mind goes blank, okay? This happens to me all the time. What it means is when you forget everything, okay? You forget what you're going to say, you forget what you're supposed to do, you forget everything, and your mind, you don't remember what you're supposed to do. So for example, if you have ever taken a test and you get the piece of paper, you get the test, and you look at it, and suddenly, oh my God, I don't remember anything. Oh my God, I've forgotten everything. That means your mind has gone blank. Or if somebody asks you a question, can what's your phone number? Maybe if you're like forgetful, you don't remember, oh, my mind just went blank. I don't remember. I need to, memorize it. Okay? So when your mind goes blank, it's usually because you're nervous or tired and you forget everything. Okay? And then maybe you remember in a minute, but at that moment you don't remember anything. Okay, so my mind just went blank. My mind always goes blank. Okay, the final example of these brain expressions with mind is make up someone's mind. So when somebody makes up their mind, it means they decide something. They decide to do something. Okay, so I can say, I have made up my mind. I'm going to university. It means I've decided to go to university. We could say, Philip made up his mind. He's going to get pizza for dinner tonight. Or Susan made up her mind. She's going to the prom with Johnny. Just another example. So when you make up your mind, you decide to do something. I've made up my mind. I'm going to be an astronaut. Another example, okay, of deciding to do something. So now let's look at some expressions that have to do with mind when we're talking about being polite and politeness. Okay, so we can also use the word mind when we are trying to be polite. And usually we use it this way if we are asking permission for something or if we are requesting something. Pretty much we are asking, is something okay? And this is a very polite way to ask that. So, for example, do you mind if? Do you mind if I smoke? So this is a question where you're politely asking, is it okay if I smoke? Okay, so we don't usually, we sometimes talk this way to our friends, but we usually use this in formal situations or with strangers or with people we don't really know that well. But we can also use it with friends too. Do you mind if I smoke? So you're asking permission. Is it okay if I smoke? Do you mind if I open the window? Do you mind if I turn off the light? Do you mind if I borrow your books? Okay, so again, you're asking permission. Now, if it's okay, you can say, I don't mind. This means it's okay. I don't mind if you open the window. I don't mind if you smoke. I don't mind if you borrow my books. You're saying, it's okay if you do this. You don't even need this. If you want, you can say, sure, I don't mind. So, you don't need the full sentence. You can just say, I don't mind, and that's okay too. What about if you do mind? What about if it's not okay? If somebody says, do you mind if I smoke? And you're not okay with it, what you can say is, I prefer if you didn't. Do you mind if I open the window? Well, I'd prefer if you didn't. Okay, so we say, I don't mind if it's okay. And we can say it in different ways, but one way is, if you have a problem, you can say, I'd prefer it if you didn't. Okay, and then we also have another expression, which means very similar. Would you mind? So this is a very polite way to speak, just like do you mind? Would you mind getting me some coffee? So in this case, I'm asking somebody to do something for me. So I'm requesting something. I want somebody to do something for me. And I'm asking, is it okay? Is it okay for you? Do you mind if you get me some coffee? Would you mind getting me some coffee? I'm requesting for the person to do something for me. Would you mind if I don't go to the party? Is it okay if I don't go to the party? Would you mind? So this, again, is very similar to do you mind. It's a polite way to either request something or ask for somebody's permission to see if something is okay. So these are all very polite ways to speak. So we've now covered mind when we're talking about the brain and thinking. We've covered mind when we're talking about being polite and requesting or asking permission for something. And now let's look at the final way we use mind, which is when we're telling somebody to pay attention to something. Okay, so our next expression has to do with paying attention. It means you're telling somebody to be careful about some sort of danger. And so that sentence is mind the, and then here you put whatever the danger is. So for example, mind the gap. If you've ever been on the subway or the tube and you see there's like between the train and the platform, there's like a hole, sometimes people might trip on that. So you'll see signs saying, mind the gap, which means be careful about the gap. Pay attention for this gap. Or on a rainy day, when it rains, the ground has puddles on it. So a puddle is like a lot of water. And what you might tell your friend is, oh wait, mind the puddle, meaning pay attention, there's a puddle there. Or maybe you see dog poo on the sidewalk and you're about to step in it and your friend says, mind the dog shit, okay? Or mind the dog poo if you want to be more polite. So, you know, you see these different dangers. Sometimes they're not dangers, but you really don't want to step in dog doo-doo. So that's an example. So anytime you're telling somebody, be careful, pay attention to this, and it's kind of urgent, you can use mind the. We also have keep in mind. So keep in mind means you're telling somebody to pay attention to something and not forget, to remember something. Okay, so for example, keep in mind the bus leaves at 8 p.m. This means remember, or, you know, keep this on your mind. Don't forget this. Pay special attention to this. The bus leaves at 8 p.m. Or imagine your boss is going on vacation and you're not going to be able to contact them. Your boss might tell you, keep in mind, I'm going on vacation on Tuesday. Okay, so keep in mind means please remember this. You're pretty much reminding somebody about something. You're telling them to to pay attention to it, to put some sort of focus on it, and to remember it. Okay, so we've covered a lot of different expressions. And just to tell you this, when we cover a lot of expressions, it's very easy to forget some of the ones we cover because we have covered many. What I recommend is maybe working on 3 or 4 a day and then just come back to the video, watch again, learn some new expressions, practice those ones, and once you're comfortable with those ones, maybe work on some of the other expressions we've covered in this video. You don't have to learn them all at the same time. You can do a little bit every day, and that way you will remember a lot more. On that note, I invite you to come check out our website at www.engvid.com, and there you can actually find a quiz where we have all of these expressions and you can practice using them in our quiz. So I highly recommend that for practice. Another point is I'd like to invite you to subscribe to our channel. There you will find a lot of incredible videos on all sorts of things. We have more vocabulary videos, grammar, pronunciation, IELTS, TOEFL, business English, all sorts of different resources that are very helpful for students. So I highly recommend you check that out. Until next time, take care, and I will see you later.